Didn't see you guys there. How awkward. Well, welcome back. Today we are going to be learning about classification. So, in the last couple of lessons, we've learned about the scientific names and how each animals have who belong to a similar group or a genus would have similar scientific names. So now we're going to go further in depth in terms of classification, the levels of classification. So, levels of classification. It is organizing living things into groups where they share important characteristics. They can still have many differences. So, even though they belong to the same group, there are also differences amongst them. So, I'm pretty sure last lesson we talked about how there were animals that belong to the Panthera genus, but we knew for a fact they were different animals, but there are similarities between them. So there is this order that you guys need to know where it starts off with the domain, the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. So these are how animals or plants or organisms are grouped. So you guys need to know the order in terms of kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. So you need to know that particular order. So at the top, it's when they're least similar to each other. So it's got a big group of organisms. And as you go further and further down, these animals or organisms become very similar to each other and will have very similar characteristics. So there are multiple ways where there are ways where you can remember this particular order. So, for example, this is one that I just found online. It said, keep ponds clean or frogs get sick. So that is the order. So what I want you guys to do is pause the video now. I'll give you 5 minutes to come up with your own order, and I want you to upload it onto OneNote. It's just a way for you guys to remember the order. So it goes kingdom, phylum, etc., etc. So go ahead and do that now. Once you're done, come back and I will continue on. Okay, guys, so this is an example of how animals are grouped. So, for example, in the first one, you've got the kingdom Animalia. So, let me just get my pen here. So, obviously, we've got this group. It has just animals in it. There is a variety of animals. So you've got grizzly bear, black bear, giant panda, red fox, Albert squirrel, coral snake, and sea star. And then as you go further and further down, do you guys notice that it's becoming more and more specific in terms of animals that are have less similarities with them? For example, the starfish and the snake are the first to disappear because the grizzly bear, black bear, giant panda seem more similar than the others, which you notice here. So it goes to kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, class Mammalia, so which I think you guys know that it means mammals. Carnivora, so carnivorous, they eat meat, and so on until you got the species here, so grizzly bear. And that name here, that is the scientific name which we learnt about last lesson. So you guys need to see how the order is formed and how we're getting similar and similar to each other as we go further down in this order. So there are 5 different kingdoms. So there's Animalia, Plantae, Fungi, Protista, and Prokaryote. So as you guys can see in this wheel here, what each one would consist of. So let me just get some of my notes here. So obviously we know the Animalia one would just consist of animals. The Plantae one would be plants. Fungi would be fungal type organisms. So these are heterotrophs. So what that means is they need to eat other things in order to survive, and they're usually multicellular. So it's not just an organism that is just one cell. It's made up of many cells, like us, like many animals and plants. Protista. So this group of organisms, they are quite diverse and they have similarities to animals, plants, um, and fungi as well. Um, However, some of them there are autotrophs, which means that they don't need to consume other organisms to get energy. They make energy themselves. And these guys, they can also be unicellular or multicellular. So they can either be just one cell surviving or multiple cells. And another thing about Protista is that it has organelles inside. So I think you guys remember when I went through cells last lesson here, where plants and animal cells, they have all these different compartments on the inside, which help them do certain things. For example, whether it's to make energy or break down certain things. So protists have that. The prokaryote, on the other hand, or prokaryotes, so they are unicellular. So what that means is they are just one cell, and that's how they're surviving. And they don't have all these complex organelles inside them. They're very simple. So these are the 5 different types of kingdoms. So here's just another picture, just showing you Plantae, Fungi, Animalia, Protista, and this one here. Can you guys see the difference between the Protista and the prokaryotes? Protista, can you see how there's things inside, there's organelles inside it, while the prokaryotes don't have that. They're very simple. So this table is very important. This kind of goes through each of the kingdoms and the differences. For example, as you guys can see, the plant cells, and the animals, those groups, they are multicellular, which means they are made up of multiple cells. You don't need to memorize this table, just have a read of it, see the differences, because if you'll be able to distinguish or be able to identify what organism belongs to what, this table will help you a lot. Okay, so kingdoms have the largest number of organisms. As you remember, it's the top tier, so it has the largest number of animals or plants or whatever it is, a particular organism. As you move down from the kingdom to species, the number of organisms at each level gets smaller. So remember, you're getting more specific. Organisms of the same species are similar but not identical, so that's very important. For example, we are Homo sapiens, however, we aren't identical. We are all humans, but we have differences amongst us. So that's what that means. So again, this is another example of how it starts with kingdom Animalia, and then we're left with the species. The genus is Homo here, so as you can see, Homo, and then sapiens. So that's why we belong to, that's why our name, our scientific name is Homo sapiens. This is just another way of representing how we have branched out, where we kind of come from. Like I said, there's many ways where you can display a classification. So classification and how it works. So a key characteristic used to classify organisms into the 5 different kingdoms was the structure of their cells. So what we do is we look at what cells a particular organism is made out of, and then we start grouping them. So there are different types of cells. So there are things out there that aren't made of cells. So if we look at this chart here, there are these things called viroids or prions and viruses. So you guys are well aware of viruses. It's a common word that we hear often these days. So the viruses aren't actually cells. So they are grouped separately. The things that are cells, on the other hand, there are prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So prokaryotes are very simple cells in terms of most of them are unicellular, so they are just one cell. They aren't made of many cells most of the time, and they have very simple structures. While eukaryotic cells, they are more complex. So it's like animal plant cells. Like I said before, they have different organelles and different compartments inside that particular cell that help them do certain things to survive. So by looking at these cells and what they're made out of, that's how we are grouped. Okay, so after watching this video, this is a task you are to do. So it is a research task. Create an informative poster. So this can be on Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint. I don't really mind. So I want you to research on why a virus is not a cell. What is the structure of the coronavirus, and find a picture. So in particular, the coronavirus, I want you guys to see if you can find a picture for me, an accurate picture that is maybe where a microscope is used. What structural features do viruses have that normal cells don't? So why are viruses not classified as a cell? What's different about them? And some of them will be very interesting to see. Why are viruses like the coronavirus hard to kill? So why is the coronavirus still out there? And then how do vaccines work? So um, how do we know that viruses are killed off by vaccines? Um, in this case, or it could be killed off by your immune system, but how does it actually work? So you need to do that research and upload it onto OneNote.